There's 600 letter carriers, all of a sudden there's only 300 jobs. And you got to figure out what to do with all these people. And that doesn't mean like Trump and them, let's just lay them off. Hell, it don't work like that. That's not how life works.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
We've got our profile segment lined up now. Every Saturday morning at about 9:45, we like to talk to a union member just about union stuff. What's going on in their local, a little bit about their story. This morning we have Lew Drass, a member of the National Association of Letter Carriers, NALC Branch 462, right here in Huntsville, Alabama. He is a former national vice president of the NALC. Lew, welcome to the program. Thanks for taking the time.
Hey, thanks for having me. How y'all doing?
I'm doing great, brother. Really appreciate you joining us this morning. One of the things that we like to ask people is what made them want to decide to be involved in your union, right? I mean, so few people are even have the ability to be a member of a union. But then the people that do have that ability, they're in a union workplace. They're just dues payers, and they don't really participate that much in their union. And so, it's always interesting to try to figure out what made you interested in participating in the union in, a more robust way than just being a dues payer?
I'd have to say it's a matter of need, I think. And when I first started, I worked as a letter carrier up in Maryland, and I was a shop steward, and I transferred to Huntsville, Alabama in 1989. And to be honest with you, I planned on dropping having to represent letter carriers. I was just going to go to work, be a good member, pay my dues, go to the union meeting. That was going to be it. That was my mindset. However, when I got here, I seen a need. I thought the letter carriers here could be represented better than they were getting. And so I ran for branch president, and I served in that capacity for about 10 years for Rocket City Branch 462 in Huntsville, Alabama. And by the way, just for the record, Rocket City Branch, we gave our name like 45 years ago, way before the president decided that was a good idea to call this place Rocket City.
Really?
So,
I thought that Trump gave us that nickname, but you're telling me that Huntsville has been the Rocket City for longer than 6 weeks.
It's amazing, isn't it?
That's awesome. That's incredible. You really do learn something new every time you tune into the Valley Labor Report. So I appreciate you giving the audience that tidbit of information. And so, you've been a member of the NALC, longer than I've been alive, been active in the union. And so can you talk about, what are, as you see it, some of the biggest issues that letter carriers are facing in 2025?
I would say the biggest issues are, we're going to have another round of bargaining for a national agreement that sets the wages and a lot of the work rules and stuff. And that's something that always is important, and it's going to be important because we start bargaining in February 26th. The contract runs out in May. Seems like we just got done with one, but we start another one. But the other half that letter carriers in our union have to look at all the time is the legislation side of it. We used to be controlled by Congress completely. Now we have the Postal Service. And just recently, when they did the HR 1, they call it the big beautiful bill thing. Anyway, in that bill, throughout the process from Congress back to Senate, back to the Congress, there was provisions in there that would, they were designed, it was specifically designed to have city letter carriers or letter carriers pay more for retirement, pay a higher percentage, draw less money when you do retire, and work longer. Those three things. And that was in the bill, and through our efforts, that didn't happen that time. But they'll be back, and you have to look at that stuff all the time. You have to try and get everybody to pay attention to that. It's hard to do because, different people or different parties and all that stuff. But you got to wipe that away when you're talking about your livelihood.
Yeah, the NALC and the APWU really were able to, I think, effectively beat back some of the worst provisions of that bill as it relates to employees of the Postal Service. And so, and you can always imagine an even more successful campaign where maybe you're able to get not only stop the bad things but get good things for letter carriers in the Postal Service. And so, but that requires, activating the membership, right? And getting the membership to participate in their union, because the power of the union is the numbers that we have, right? I mean, ultimately, if you're just a union that has some dues payers or even has people that aren't members of the union, and, this is what I told my employee, my fellow workers every time I would give a new employee orientation, I would tell them, look, I'm a steward and I've got the contract and, I know it and I can argue it with the best of them. But if I go to a grievance meeting and management doesn't believe that I actually represent some relevant section of the workforce, then he is going to disregard whatever I say, right? It doesn't matter what I say, because you have to have the backing of the membership, and that goes double for politics. I mean, if you're trying to talk to a politician, a congressperson, and they think that you don't represent any meaningful part of their constituency, they are not going to listen to you, right? And so you have to have an active membership. And so how do you get members to be active in their unions?
Well, before I give you there, I just want to make one more point about the legislative thing and the trying to cut stuff from letter carriers. It's so nonsensical because the Postal Service is not a taxpayer-funded entity. It's a ratepayer-funded entity. So any kind of cuts like that is not going to help the deficit or anything like that, because we're not a taxpayer-funded entity. Anyway, getting members to help. If you get to them and you can talk to anybody just about, you have a pretty good chance of getting some of them to listen to you, because most letter carriers do trust their union, right, or the representatives. Otherwise, they wouldn't have elected them. But it's a constant struggle and a battle to do both.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
I'm sure, over the years that you've been involved in the union, you've got a bunch of really good stories. Can you give us an example from your career that you feel like illustrates the value of, the value of the union, the value of participation and activity within your union, and how letter carriers can kind of apply lessons from that story to today?
That's tough for me to do, because every position I've ever had, being branch president for 10 years, I was a national business agent for 8 years, representing Tennessee and Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. I was a national. I went to Washington for 12 years. But the whole thing, the constant, is giving advice and creating things to make things easier for those that are trying to represent letter carriers. And that, to me, is the key of the value. The better the representation you can provide, the more attractive the union is to people, I think. When somebody gets fired, putting somebody's career back together is something that it's hard to put into words. But the value to it, I see people sometimes still today, maybe I represented them 20 years ago and saved their job for them or whatever. And you see them out there and they're still hanging, they're still going. They had that one blip in their life, whatever it was.
Right.
Somebody has a career for 30 years, things happen to people. They just do. Life, Right. And if you can get somebody through that rough patch, that's the most rewarding thing, I think. When I was business agent, we had Katrina. Katrina came and cut New Orleans in half, and then some. And there, you think about it, there's 600 letter carriers, all of a sudden there's only 300 jobs. And you got to figure out what to do with all these people. And that doesn't mean like Trump and them, let's just lay them off. Hell, it don't work like that. That's not how life works. And that was an area for me in my career that I had to give a lot of advice and try and help people, that had lost their homes and relocate them and keep them in a job and all that. And, the Postal Service, to their credit, was good on that. They're not good on many things, but they were good on that. And we got through that whole thing, and everybody survived, and nobody lost their job. They lost their house, and they got their house back, and then they were able to move back to New Orleans. And now it's all you gotta do is look down there. It's all come back.
Right.
So when I was at headquarters, I did a lot of creating programs, creating training programs, like week-long training programs, and writing training manuals and stuff like that, all designed to try and make it so that anybody has the opportunity, whether you're in the smallest town or you're in the biggest city, to be able to provide excellent representation to the people you serve. And those are that kind of value, to me, that'll live on past me. All that stuff's there, and it's very rewarding for me to see that people still using it. I mean, it's there. It's not, right. People don't even remember how it got there. So, but it's instilled, and it's part of the fabric now, and so that's really cool.
That is definitely a really important thing, and something for other union leaders to really think about. How can your work continue after you are after you retire or after you leave the position for a different position? Because you don't want to leave your successor in a place where they're not able to perform as effectively as they could, right? And so I tried to do very similar things where I was a steward, and I created new employee orientation PowerPoints, I created flyers, I created stuff like that, and pass it on to the people who took over after me, so that that way they could kind of continue doing the stuff that I was doing as steward. And so making resources that can live beyond one person's tenure as a steward or a business agent, I think it's definitely some really good advice for union leaders. As we're wrapping up here, I'm curious about your outlook on, what are some of the exciting things that the NALC is doing, and that can be nationally or locally.
I'll tell you this. I guess I've come full circle, and I look more. I'm looking at the local level again, back to Branch 462, the Rocket City branch. And the exciting thing for me is my daughter, who I can remember when she was I have twins, and they were like 3, and it would be the Christmas meeting. They'd be on my lap. I'm running this meeting and trying to keep them, give them something to color with, trying to keep them sort of, Anyway. She grew up, she became a letter carrier, and she was elected the branch president for Rocket City Branch 462 in January. And that's very exciting for me. And how she's running that branch and how open they are, and the kind of, the number of members that come to the meetings, either by Zoom or in person. It's really so much better than the national average. They might get...
I'll agree with that. I've been to a Branch 462 meeting before, as an officer of the Labor Council here locally, and I was surprised at how many folks were at the meeting myself. So seeing that level of participation in a union is always a really good thing to see. Lew Drass, member of NALC Branch 462 here in Huntsville, former national vice president. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.